My cousin said she needed a place to stay. Now I know she was pregnant from the man who got me sterilized without telling me. I'm a 33-year-old woman and I can't have children. Not because of biology. Not because of some tragic illness or accident. But because my ex made that decision for me, without my consent. And I only found out because my cousin moved in. Her name's Jade. We grew up like sisters. She's 2 years younger than me and has always been the reckless one. Wild, beautiful, chaotic. She crashed with me 2 months ago after breaking up with a married man, or so she said. She showed up on my doorstep at 1 a.m. with a suitcase and swollen eyes. I didn't ask questions. I just let her in. I'm a nurse. I work long shifts, I don't have time for drama. But I just ended a 10-year relationship with David, my ex-husband, and the house was quiet, too quiet. Jade brought noise. Movement. Someone to talk to. It felt good. Until it didn't. One night, Jade came home late. I was on the couch with a glass of wine, half watching something on Netflix. She stumbled in, dropped her purse, and walked straight to the fridge. I noticed it immediately, the glow on her face. Not makeup, not alcohol. That kind of softness you only get when something new is growing inside you. I asked, without thinking, "Are you pregnant?" She froze. Back still to me. Then said, "Maybe." My stomach dropped. Maybe? She didn't even deny it. I waited a second, then asked, "Who's the father?" She turned around, and I swear to God, she smiled. Just a little. Like she was about to enjoy whatever came next. "I don't want to talk about it," she said. Not yet. I should have pushed. But I didn't. I went to bed that night with a weird taste in my mouth. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and then, as if life was trying to slap me across the face, I ran into David. My ex. At the hospital. He was there for some kind of consultation, I don't even remember the department. We hadn't spoken since the divorce 6 months earlier. He was all smiles. Too casual. He asked how I was doing. Said he'd heard I'd gotten the house. I wanted to punch him. Then he dropped a bomb. "Jade's doing well, right? She told me she was staying with you." I blinked. "You've spoken to Jade?" "Yeah," he said, like it was nothing. "A few times. She's cool." I walked away before I lost it. That night, I waited for Jade to come home. When she walked in, I didn't even let her take off her coat. "You're pregnant," I said. "And it's David's." She didn't answer. She just sat down and started crying. Crying like she was the victim. I felt this cold clarity wash over me. The kind you only get when your whole reality rearranges itself in a single second. I said, "How long?" She whispered, "Since just after you filed for divorce." I asked, "Did you know he was the reason I couldn't get pregnant? That he signed the sterilization paperwork behind my back?" Her head snapped up. "What?" I stared at her. "He told the doctors I'd consented. During my surgery. Signed it himself while I was under." She looked horrified. But not shocked. And that's when I knew, she'd known. Maybe not the full story. But enough. She said, "I thought you didn't want kids." I laughed. Loud. Bitter. "I never said that. He didn't want kids. He told me we'd talk about it later. And instead, he made the choice for both of us." She looked at her lap. Her hands were shaking. "I didn't know," she repeated. But I didn't believe her. Because Jade has always wanted what I had. My friends, my apartment, my clothes, my life. And now, somehow, she had the one thing I was never even allowed to choose for myself. She had his baby. And I had nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to her throw up in the bathroom. Morning sickness. guilt. Whatever. And I realized something even darker. David hadn't just cheated. He'd replaced me. Replaced me with someone who looked like me, talked like me, knew me. And now he'd get to be a father, something he robbed me of, just because he finally found someone who wouldn't ask questions. My cousin. My own blood. And in that moment, I started to wonder how much of my life had been a lie. How long they'd been planning this. And what exactly I was going to do about it. I didn't speak to her for 3 days. Not a word. She stayed in the guest room, tiptoeing around like a ghost. I could hear her crying some nights, muffled sobs into the pillow. I didn't care. Let her cry. On the 4th day, I finally said something. We were both in the kitchen. She was buttering toast like it was any other morning, like she wasn't carrying the child of the man who had cut my future out of me without my consent. You need to leave. She froze, knife hovering midair. I don't have anywhere else to go. That's not my problem, Jade. You don't get to my husband, ex-husband, and live under my roof. She turned to face me. Her eyes were bloodshot. I didn't plan it, okay? It just happened. That made me laugh. A full, bitter, joyless laugh. No, Jade. A flat tire just happens. You let it happen. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I thought you didn't want kids. I dropped the mug I was holding. It shattered on the floor, just like something inside me. I walked right up to her, close enough to see the little red blotches on her skin where she'd scratched herself from stress. Do you know what it's like to be told you can't have children, when you never even got the chance to choose? She said nothing. He took that from me. He forged my ****ing signature while I was unconscious. And you gave him the one thing he stole from me. Still nothing. I said, get out. She shook her head. Please. Just until I find a place. I don't want to go to a shelter. And maybe I'm weak. Or maybe I still had a part of me that remembered sleepovers with her when we were kids, playing dress up, whispering secrets under a blanket. So I said, 2 weeks. That's it. She nodded like she'd been handed a gift. That night, I sat on my laptop until 3 a.m. and pulled up every hospital record I had access to. I work in healthcare. I know the system. And I had a copy of my surgical records from 5 years ago, when I'd had a supposedly routine ovarian cyst removal. The procedure notes were there. The forms. My forged consent to a bilateral salpingectomy, removal of both fallopian tubes. David had signed it. Pretending to be me. And nobody had questioned it. Rage doesn't even cover what I felt. And then something worse occurred to me. What if this wasn't just about me? What if he'd done it before? David worked in finance. Slick, charming, always dressed too well for the occasion. The kind of man who could convince you the sky was green if you gave him 5 minutes and a confident tone. He was also obsessed with control. Not just in our relationship. Everywhere. Budgeting my spending. Tracking my cycle. Telling me when to eat, when to sleep, what healthy looked like. I used to call it love. I used to think he just cared too much. Like an idiot, and now Jade, naive, impulsive Jade, was carrying his baby. I started wondering, had he sabotaged her birth control? Had he wanted to get her pregnant? Because if he could forge my signature, what else was he capable of? The next day, I called her into the living room. Told her to sit. I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. Did David ever talk to you about me not wanting kids? She looked down. Sort of. Sort of? He said, you were scared of being a mom. That it made you anxious. That you'd talked about getting your tubes tied because you didn't want to end up like your own mother. I felt sick. And you believed him? She shrugged. He made it sound like it was mutual. Did you ever think to ask me? She didn't answer. So I asked her another question. Are you keeping the baby? She hesitated. Then nodded slowly. I think so, she said. I didn't plan this, but I don't want to get rid of it. I stared at her. At the belly that hadn't even started to show yet. At the idea growing inside her. A child. His child. The one thing I would never have. And suddenly, the pain turned to something else. A plan. I smiled. Not because I forgave her. But because I needed her close. I needed to know everything. How it started. What he told her. What he's planning now. Because if David thought he could take my body, my choices, and now my family, he was wrong. Dead wrong. I didn't sleep that night. While Jade snored quietly behind her door, I sat on the living room couch with my laptop, my files, my rage. I read every email I ever exchanged with David around the time of my surgery. Scanned every signature. Looked at timestamps, metadata, digital crumbs. I was searching for something I didn't even know how to define, proof, maybe, or just enough puzzle pieces to make the picture undeniable. I found it at 4:17 a.m. An email from David to the surgeon's assistant, 2 days before my operation. Subject, consent clarification. His message was brief, direct, like always, just confirming again that she's comfortable with the salpingectomy during the procedure. She told me yesterday she doesn't want to talk to the doctor directly because it stresses her out, but we agreed this is the right move. Thanks. He spoke for me. Worse, he replaced me. I felt nauseous. I remembered that week. I was scared. I'd asked 100 questions about the cyst, the risks, the options. The surgeon had been polite but rushed, told me they'd discuss options during the procedure if needed. I didn't know then that my fate had already been decided, by the man holding my hand in the waiting room. By the man who was now about to become a father, with my cousin. At 6 a.m. I made coffee and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked like a ghost. Hollowed out. I didn't cry. There wasn't space for crying anymore. Only cold, clean decisions. I let Jade sleep in. Around 10 a.m. I made her breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee. She looked surprised but grateful. She sat at the table, blinking away sleep and nausea. I want to help, I told her. She looked up. Help? With the pregnancy. I can take you to appointments. Help you get on your feet. You'll need support. Her eyes softened. Really? Yeah, I said. We're family. And that word tasted like ash in my mouth. She nodded. She even smiled. You're not mad anymore? She asked. I'm still hurt, I answered. But I'm not going to let a man ruin both our lives. He doesn't get that power. That part was true. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role. I helped her sign up for prenatal care, drove her to appointments, even bought her maternity clothes. She was grateful, clung to me in that way she always had, like a kid who broke your favorite mug and hopes you'll still let her sleep over. Meanwhile, I was gathering everything. I had printouts of hospital files, copies of insurance documents, screenshots of texts between her and David that she stupidly left open on her phone one day. I saw one that made my skin crawl. David, she never wanted kids. I just couldn't wait forever. Jade, she's going to hate me. David, she won't. She's practical. She'll understand eventually. You're doing this for both of us. Both of us. That's when I knew he never saw me as a person. Just a vessel. A choice to make. And when I stopped being useful, he moved on. And Jade? She thought she was special. I started talking to a lawyer. I didn't go to the police yet. I knew the statute of limitations on medical fraud was complicated. And proving reproductive coercion? Almost impossible. But I was building a file. Something solid. Not just for legal action, maybe for press. For exposure. For war. Then came the call that changed everything. Jade was in the bathroom. Her phone buzzed on the couch. I shouldn't have answered. But I did. It was David. His voice, warm and smug, filled the line. "Hey baby, you okay? I got your texts. You throwing up again?" I didn't say anything. "Jade," he asked. "You there?" I said, "You're a coward." Silence. Then he said, "Ava?" "Yeah," I said. "It's me." He tried to backpedal, of course. Said it wasn't what I thought. Said Jade came onto him. That I was always so distant and he wasn't even sure I loved him anymore. I let him talk. Let him dig the hole. Then I said, "I know everything, the forged consent. The baby. The messages. You're done, David. I'm going to bury you." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Come on, Ava. You think anyone's going to care about a little paperwork mistake from 5 years ago? You think they'll listen to the ex-wife who let her cousin move in and get knocked up? You think this ends with you holding a baby?" I snapped. "You think you get a second chance at family after stealing mine?" He paused. "You're bluffing," he said. "No," I told him. "You picked the wrong woman to mutilate." Then I hung up. I turned and saw Jade standing in the hallway. Her face was pale. She'd heard everything. She whispered, "You knew?" "I know everything." And I walked past her, into my bedroom, and locked the door. Because I wasn't finished yet. Not even close. The house felt like a war zone after that call. Quiet, tense, but ready to explode at any moment. Jade barely spoke to me for the next 2 days. I didn't care. I was busy turning my pain into a strategy. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating properly. I spent every spare second compiling evidence, timelines, messages, printed medical records, testimonies I wrote out myself in case it ever came to court. I wanted to document every detail because I didn't just want David exposed. I wanted his entire world to collapse like mine had. I started calling journalists anonymously. I reached out to advocacy groups for women who had undergone unauthorized sterilization. It turns out there are more of us than I ever realized. One woman told me she'd lost both ovaries during what was supposed to be a minor fibroid procedure. Another had been lied to by her doctor after her husband convinced them she was unstable. We weren't isolated cases. We were a pattern. And David? He was part of it. The thing is, Jade didn't want to believe she'd been used. That's what made everything harder. She still wanted her fantasy. She was trying to hold on to the idea that she and David were some tragic love story that began in betrayal but would somehow bloom into redemption. I heard her on the phone with him late one night. I was standing on the stairs, just out of sight. "I don't know, David. She said she's going to ruin you." I didn't know about the surgery, I swear. I thought she knew. Her voice cracked. Then she said something that made my blood go cold. "You said she was never meant to find out." Never meant to find out. So it wasn't just about what David did to me. It was what he fed her. The lies, the manipulation. He didn't just sleep with my cousin, he rewrote the narrative of our entire marriage, then used it to get her into bed. I wanted to scream. Instead, I waited. That weekend, Jade had her first major ultrasound. I told her I'd come with her. She said David was supposed to take her. I said, "Good. Then I'll see him face to face." She hesitated. "Please don't make a scene." "I won't," I lied. We met at the clinic. He showed up with sunglasses on, looking like a smug piece of sh*t from a Netflix docuseries. When he saw me in the waiting room, he had the nerve to smirk, like I was the crazy one. Like he was in control. "Hi, Ava," he said. Calm. Too calm. I said nothing. He sat beside Jade. Held her hand like it was nothing. Like she wasn't carrying the last thread of my stolen future inside her. The nurse called them in. I followed. David tried to say something in the hallway, something performative, about peace, or understanding, or forgiveness. I said, "You're going to lose your job. Your license. Maybe even your kid." That wiped the smug off his face. I handed him an envelope. He opened it. Inside were copies of the hospital records, the email he wrote, and a typed statement of my intent to file a civil lawsuit. "You're bluffing," he whispered again, but there was less confidence in his voice this time. I leaned in. "I already have a lawyer. I already have advocacy groups behind me. The only question left is whether you want this on the news before or after the baby's born." Jade stood frozen between us. She looked from me to him, like her stomach had just dropped through the floor. After the appointment, she didn't speak to either of us. Later that night, she came into my room, holding a glass of water with both hands like a child. "I didn't know," she said, quietly. "I didn't know he did that to you." I didn't say anything. She sat on the edge of the bed. "You're right. He manipulated me. I didn't want to see it. I thought I was the one he chose. But I was just convenient." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She looked tired. Empty. "You can still leave him," I said. "I already did," she whispered. "I told him I don't want anything to do with him unless it's through a lawyer." We sat in silence for a while, then she said, "I'm going to move out next week." "Where will you go?" "A shelter, maybe. Or my dad's." I didn't answer. Because I didn't know what I wanted anymore. To punish her? To help her? To burn everything down or build something new? But something inside me shifted when she added, "I'm keeping the baby. But I'm not doing it for him." She looked down at her stomach. Then at me. "I'm doing it because I think I need to believe something good can still come out of this mess." And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like screaming. I just felt tired. I nodded, and for a moment, I saw two women, side by side, both used, both broken, both trying to crawl their way back towards something that looked like agency. Neither of us had won. But maybe, just maybe, neither of us was finished yet. Jade moved out 5 days later. She didn't go to a shelter. She went to her father's place, my Uncle Patrick. He wasn't thrilled about the situation, but he welcomed her. He'd always been softer than our mothers, more forgiving. Maybe too forgiving. I didn't go to work that week. I called in sick, burned through my last 3 PTO days. I needed time, space, quiet. For the first time in months, I had my home back. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Every room reminded me of her footsteps, her perfume, her little giggles on the phone with David. The couch where she slept, the guest bed she probably conceived in. I started rearranging furniture. Tossed the sheets. Donated the pillows. Anything to make the place feel like it belonged to me again. It didn't work. Because you can't clean betrayal out with bleach. Meanwhile, my lawyer was moving faster than I expected. She'd filed for civil damages on 2 fronts, forgery and medical battery. Apparently, the surgeon could also face professional sanctions for performing a procedure based on false consent, even if they didn't know it was forged. It was a long shot, but I didn't care. I just wanted someone to say, this was real. This happened. David, of course, was panicking. His lawyer sent mine a bland cease and desist letter, claiming I was making libelous threats. My lawyer laughed and responded with a 67-page evidence file. Then it got quiet. Too quiet. That's when the emails started. Anonymous ones. The first just said, "You think this makes you look strong, but everyone sees what you really are." The second came a day later, "Crazy women shouldn't be nurses." And the third, 2 days after that, was a screenshot of a Reddit thread. A fake post, obviously written by David, from a burner account. Title: My ex-wife is trying to ruin my life because I moved on. The comments were disgusting. Full of men cheering him on. saying things like bitter women don't deserve kids anyway, and sounds like she's just jealous. I felt sick. He was weaponizing the internet, turning strangers into soldiers for his narrative. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I told the truth, publicly. I emailed the story, my records, everything, to a journalist at a women's health magazine who had previously written about reproductive coercion. I didn't give her my name at first, but she responded within an hour. She said, "I believe you." It was the first time I'd heard those words from someone who didn't know me personally. And it shattered me. I started crying at my kitchen table, just sobbing over my tea, letting go of months, years, of silence. 3 days later, the story went live. The article didn't name David directly, but it didn't need to. Enough details were there for anyone who knew us to connect the dots. It exploded on Twitter. A thread went viral. Other women came forward. Some shared eerily similar stories. Some said they knew a friend of a friend who'd had their birth control tampered with by a partner. By the end of the week, David's LinkedIn had been scrubbed. His Instagram went private. He called me once. Left a voicemail. "You've made your point. Now stop before this gets worse." Worse for who, David? I didn't respond. But Jade did. She sent me a photo. A sonogram, the baby's tiny profile floating in that fuzzy gray sea. No words. Just the image. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what I felt. Hate? Love? Grief? Envy? Maybe all of it. Maybe none. Then she messaged, "I'm sorry again. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want the baby to know who you are one day. The real you. Not what he says." I didn't reply. But I saved the picture. And for the first time since this all began, I imagined something impossible. Not peace. Not reconciliation. But the idea that maybe, one day, the child born from betrayal might grow up and understand that not all women who rage are crazy. Some of us are just done being quiet. 2 weeks after the article went viral, my mother called me out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Our relationship had always been complicated, tight-lipped, distant, built on guilt and performance. She never liked it when I talked about emotions. She said they weakened a woman. But that morning, her voice sounded different. Smaller. "Your aunt called me," she said. "She said you ruined David's career." I rolled my eyes. I exposed what he did. There was a pause. "She also said you're trying to take Jade's baby." What? My stomach dropped. "That's not true." "I didn't think so," she said quietly. "But people are talking. You know how this family is." God, did I? Our family didn't do confrontation, we did gossip. Passive aggression passed down like heirlooms. "She came to me," I said. "Pregnant by my ex-husband, the man who sterilized me behind my back. And somehow, I'm the villain?" My mother sighed. "I'm not saying what he did was right. But maybe some things should stay in the past." I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh. "Would you say that if someone had done it to you?" She didn't answer. Typical. But before she hung up, she added something that stuck in my chest: "Don't let this destroy you." Too late, I thought. Except, it wasn't. Not really. It had changed me. Broken something. But it hadn't killed me. Not yet. And weirdly, in all the mess, something else had started to grow. Quiet at first. Subtle. Support. Women from around the country were messaging me anonymously, saying things like, "Your story gave me the courage to leave," or "I never thought someone else had gone through this." I even got an email from a doctor, female, mid-30s, who told me she had once turned away a husband asking about a hysterectomy for his wife. Said something about him felt off. She said she remembered my story when a similar request came in again recently. And this time, she refused to proceed without speaking to the woman directly. That's when it hit me. Maybe this wasn't just about me anymore. Maybe David had tried to destroy me, but I was becoming something he couldn't touch, visible. Jade, meanwhile, was quieter now. We messaged sometimes. Just simple things. Updates about her pregnancy. Questions about baby gear. She said she'd started therapy. Said she was having nightmares, David locking her in, gaslighting her, telling her she imagined everything. I told her I understood. Because I did. I'd lived that. She asked if I wanted to come to her next scan. Just to see. Just to be part of something. I said yes. And that surprised both of us. The clinic was quiet that day. Clean. Bright. Nothing like the place where I'd been cut open without consent. I sat beside her. Watched the tech smear cold gel on her belly. Watched the screen flicker to life. And then, there it was. The baby. Small. Curled. Alive. Jade turned to me. She looked like she was holding her breath. Maybe she thought I'd cry. Or walk out. Or scream. But I didn't. I just looked. And something in my chest loosened. Not forgiveness. Not healing. But a crack of light. The tech asked, "Want to know the sex?" Jade looked at me. I nodded. "It's a girl," the tech said. A girl. My stomach turned. Would this child grow up with her father's manipulative blood? Would she lie like him? Destroy like him? Or would she fight like me? Jade was still staring at the screen, eyes glossy. "She's real," she whispered. And I knew what she meant. It wasn't about the baby. It was about herself. Her own reality. Her body. Her story. Finally becoming hers again. We walked out into the parking lot together. The sky was overcast. Air thick with the smell of spring rain. Jade turned to me before getting in her car. "Can I name her after you?" she asked. I blinked. "What?" "Middle name. Ava. Just so she knows where she comes from. What we survived." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her she hadn't earned that. But I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen since we were kids, back when we used to sit under the kitchen table with flashlights, pretending we were hiding from monsters. Only now, the monsters were real. And we weren't pretending anymore. So I said, "Okay." And for once, that word didn't feel like surrender. It felt like survival. 2 weeks before the due date, Jade sent me a voice message. She was crying. Not the kind of cry that asks for attention, but the deep, messy, hopeless kind that sounds like it's coming from the bottom of someone's stomach. "He's trying to see me again," she sobbed. "He messaged me from a different number. He said he deserves to be in her life. He said if I don't let him, he'll take me to court and get full custody." I stopped walking. I was in the middle of a parking lot, holding groceries. I just stood there, frozen between a pack of chicken and a carton of almond milk, listening to her pain through my earbuds. "Please," she said at the end. "Please tell me what to do." I wanted to scream. David was a monster. A manipulative, calculating, narcissistic sociopath who had spent years reshaping people around him like clay until they no longer recognized themselves. I thought I was finally done with him. I thought we were. But men like David don't disappear. They rebrand. They circle back. They find new angles, new weaknesses. Now he was using the baby, the same one he created out of betrayal, as leverage. I dropped the groceries off, went home, and called my lawyer. She said the only thing Jade could do was get ahead of him legally. File for full custody before he made a move. Document everything. Restraining order if needed. "He won't stop," I said. "Even if she gets full custody." "No," my lawyer agreed. "But if she doesn't act now, he'll shape the narrative before she does." I relayed everything to Jade that night. She came over with red eyes and a printed stack of the new texts. One of them read, "You wouldn't even be pregnant if it wasn't for me. You owe me this." Another said, "I made her for us, Jade. Not just for you." I felt sick. It was all the same language he used on me. The same ownership. The same belief that people, women, were objects he'd built and now expected to collect. "You can't reason with him," I said. "He thinks he owns you." "I thought I loved him," she whispered. I really believed it. Even when I saw what he'd done to you. Even when I moved into your house. I told myself I was different. "He wanted you to believe that," I said. "That's how he wins." She nodded. "I've made every wrong choice. You're making the right one now." We spent the whole night putting together everything. A digital file. Screenshots, timeline, voice memos. I even wrote my own statement in case she wanted it in court. It was raw and ugly and painful, but I meant every word. At 3 a.m. we sat at my kitchen table, exhausted. "You ever wonder what your life would have looked like if you never met him?" she asked. "Every day," I said. "But then," she said, putting a hand on her belly, "this wouldn't exist either." I nodded. The contradiction was heavy. Like a rock on my chest. She was the living embodiment of both his betrayal and our survival. A symbol of what he stole, and what he couldn't keep. The day Jade gave birth, I was there. She wanted me in the room. I held her hand through contractions. Helped her breathe. Wiped her forehead. And when the baby came out, screaming, red-faced, alive, I stood there shaking. Jade looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She's here," she whispered. The nurse handed her the baby, but Jade looked at me and said, "You hold her first." I didn't move. "Please," she said. So I did. I held this tiny, soft, vulnerable thing. A girl. A girl born out of something dark. And all I could think was, she deserved better than us. Better than this story. Jade named her Elia. Elia Ava. In the days that followed, Jade filed for full custody. David got served before he even knew Jade had delivered. He tried to retaliate with a counterclaim. Claimed I brainwashed her. Said we were turning his daughter against him. But the texts ruined him. The article had already done its job. His reputation was radioactive. His friends distanced themselves. His parents publicly disowned him. He tried to play the victim online again. Nobody listened this time. Jade moved back in with her dad for the first few months, just to get on her feet. I visited often. Sometimes I brought groceries. Sometimes just coffee and silence. We didn't pretend things were healed. But we showed up. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I wasn't just surviving anymore. Maybe I was learning how to live again, on my terms. It's been 11 months. Elia is almost walking now. Sometimes I'll be at Jade's place, and she'll wobble across the carpet, arms out like she's testing gravity, and I'll catch her just before she falls. She always laughs, like the world has never failed her. Like she has no idea what it took to bring her here. No idea how much pain preceded her breath. Sometimes I envy that. But most days, I'm just grateful she exists. Jade is different now. Quieter. Stronger in the quiet way. She still goes to therapy, and I can see it reshaping her from the inside. She's more careful with her words. She thinks before she speaks. She doesn't ask for my forgiveness every time I walk into the room. That stopped months ago. Instead, we talk about Elia's nap schedule. About Jade's new part-time job. About how hard it is to find decent childcare. We've learned to coexist in a version of our lives we didn't choose, but one we're trying to make work anyway. David? He disappeared from the city after losing his job. Word is, he's working in some small clinic down south, barely hanging on to his license. The legal case is still crawling through the courts. My lawyer says it'll be a long process. I've stopped holding my breath for justice. But that doesn't mean I've stopped fighting. Last month, I was asked to speak at a conference on reproductive autonomy. Just a panel, 10 minutes. I almost said no. But when I told Jade, she looked at me and said, "You have to." So I did. I told a room full of strangers what it felt like to wake up missing a part of your body you never consented to lose. I told them how it starts, not in the or, but in the small things. In the way someone rewrites your reality. In the way they take credit for your strength, then weaponize your silence. Afterward, a young nurse approached me, eyes red. She said, "I've never told anyone, but my ex tampered with my pills. I always thought it was my fault." And I just hugged her. That was all I could offer. Because some wounds don't close. They become part of your skin. That night, I came home and found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a children's book. A simple one. A girl who loses her voice but finds it again in unexpected places. No note. I don't know who sent it. But I read it to Elia the next time I saw her. She stared up at me like she understood every word. Maybe she did. Maybe children always do. Before I left, Jade asked me, "Do you ever think about having kids again? With someone else?" I paused. And then I said, "I don't think I need to. I already have one." She didn't say anything. Just nodded. I kissed Elias' forehead. And as I stepped outside, into the dusk, I realized something I never thought I'd believe again. Even when people take everything from you, they can't take the truth. And sometimes, truth is enough to build something new. Even from ruins. But still, there are days when I wake up and it all hits me again. What he took, what I lost. What I'll never get back. And I wonder, am I healing? Or just surviving better? I don't know. I just know I'm not done.
Follow me for more stories.